after it was dammed and turned into a massive reservoir. The campaign to reclaim Hetch Hetchy.
Welcome to News Conference with us, Ron Nehring, Chairman of the California Republican Party. Thank you for taking the time.
Thank you for having me.
You've had a couple of weeks to look back on this election. What happened?
Well, I think the nation took a turn for the better, electing a new Republican Congress, firing Nancy Pelosi, electing a large Republican majority in the House of Representatives. That's going to put a stop to the tax increases and the massive increases in government spending that we've seen over the course of the last 2 years. I think that what you saw was a massive vote of no confidence in the Obama administration nationally, and Republicans took back a lot of seats that the Democrats had taken in 2006 and 2008 in those two wave years.
That's the good news, but in California it was a different story.
In California, clearly the race here, the election here was dominated by the governor's race. Most of the voters who went to the polls, when asked were they brought to the polls by the governor's race or the Senate race, they were brought by the governor's race, and that's a race which the Democrats won. I think the governor's race became, the number one issue in the governor's race became Meg Whitman, and she is someone who had to spend a great deal of money, obviously, going against a career politician like Jerry Brown. I think our system benefits and is biased against career politicians, because if you have someone new comes in the process, they have to spend a lot of money to build a political infrastructure, build name ID, and so on and so forth. But that spending became a lot of the issue. It helped, it defined her in a way that crowded out a lot of the other important issues.
This came
today.
at a time when you had so many people who were upset over the doings of Wall Street. You had two CEOs at the top of your ticket, not only Meg Whitman, but Carly Fiorina, and neither had any political experience. Was that a mistake?
I don't think it was a mistake. I think that people are looking for folks outside of government and outside of just career politicians, but we have a system that really is biased in favor of career politicians. I'll give you an example. Barbara Boxer had 6 years to raise all the money that she needed in order to compete here in California. Carly Fiorina only won the Republican primary 5 months before that election, so she had almost no lead time to raise the money necessary to compete statewide.
But Meg Whitman didn't have a problem with money, and she got slaughtered.
No, she didn't, and in her case, the spending that she invested in her own campaign.
She was overexposed?
I don't think she was overexposed, but I think that the spending became a dominant issue. It defined her in a way that she wasn't able to define herself outside of that.
Now, the LA Times on Friday released a poll saying that 1 in 5 Californians could never see them voting for a Republican, 1 in 3 Latinos. Their numbers indicate that most Californians are not on the same side of the Republican Party on issues such as immigration. They want immigration reform. Same-sex marriage, they want it. And they don't see anything wrong with government regulation of private enterprise. What do you take from that poll? You have an uphill road to climb.
Well, a couple things. First is that we had a vote on same-sex marriage and traditional marriage here in California, and traditional marriage won out. We had, the Republican Party supports immigration reform that starts with securing our border, making sure that our borders are secured and protected, and not going for some amnesty which rewards bad behavior and serves as a magnet for more people to break the law. But really the challenge when it comes to issues such as immigration is that issues like the Arizona immigration law and Proposition 187, they become symbols, broader symbols that serve to define who is with a particular community or not. Republicans have to do a better job, number one, building relationships into our urban and immigrant communities. We have to make sure that we're promoting candidates for local offices from those communities. We have lots of Republican candidates from diverse backgrounds who are running for office and are winning with strong backing from the Republican Party. I don't see that message really being reflected in a particular poll from one newspaper.
When you had the insurance commissioner, Steve Poizner, in his campaign against Meg Whitman in the primary, say, we need to revive Prop 187. He said that at a debate in Orange County. What was your reaction to that?
My reaction was that both Steve Poizner and Meg Whitman were working to win a Republican primary at the time, and immigration became...
But did you say to yourself, oh my goodness, we don't want to go down that road again?
Well, I think Proposition 187 was adopted, was passed, it was struck down, and that's not about the future. The future is one of where we need to secure our borders. We're a border state. We see the problems that are coming from the lack of federal enforcement on the border all the time. But clearly the main issues in this campaign were about taxes, spending, the economy, jobs, and debt. Those are the issues that are driving the discussion in California, where our unemployment rate is about 3 points above the national average.
The future is also a Latino voting bloc. How do you reach that voting bloc?
It's very important.
When they have gone out of their way to say that, in the LA Times poll in particular, that they have rejected your party.
There are 4 things that we need to do with respect to our urban and our immigrant communities, of which the Latino community is obviously the largest part of our Asian community, very important part of as well. Number one, we need to build relationships year-round, not just in the 6 months before a primary election. We need to support candidates from diverse backgrounds with Republican Party backing. We're doing that. We need to do more of it. We need to build coalitions based on issues. For example, in the Central Valley, a Republican named Andy Vidak won 49% of the vote in a 68% Latino district because the issue of water. The Democrats on the wrong side of the issue of water. It's hurting the Latino community in the Central Valley. They're on the wrong side of school choice, which is hurting the African American community in Los Angeles. We need to do better at building coalitions that are specific to those issues, where we can build bridges into those communities where the Democrats are on the wrong side of those issues.
Where do you recruit your candidates? Every down ballot race, statewide, you lost, except for the Attorney General race, and you're losing there.
Well, I think, as I said earlier, the governor's race clearly defined the statewide dynamic here, and that was not in our favor as Republicans. In terms of taking a look at the bench, the most important bench that we have is when we run Republican candidates for local government offices. There's no such thing as a nonpartisan office in California. Every school board, fire board, water board, city council, mosquito abatement district, you name it, that is our crop of candidates for the future to run for state office, to run for federal office down the road. That is a source of strength for us. That's why we supported a tremendous number of Republican candidates for local government office in this election.
Now, there was a majority vote on one of the ballot measures. Now there's a majority vote on the budget in the California legislature. In the past, they needed a couple of Republican votes on the Senate and the Assembly side. Does that make your party irrelevant in the state legislature?
No, actually, I think it makes it more important, because now the Democrats don't have Republicans to blame for impasses on the state budget. The Democrats now own this budgetary process, but they can't raise taxes without Republican support. Republicans are not going to vote to raise taxes. So now they're in the position where the Democratic Party has to try to explain to the labor unions who own them lock, stock, and barrel how they have to cut spending. And they're not going to be able to blame any type of impasse on Republicans. What we have now is a majority vote budget, but it requires a supermajority vote in order to raise taxes. That's what the Democrats want. I think they're going to wish that they hadn't passed that.
Let's get back to the kind of candidate you need in order to win. Some have said you need a pro-choice Republican. Only a pro-choice Republican can win in this state. The Times poll indicates that a majority of the people they talk to want more moderate Republicans, but we have a system by which in the primary, you have a Republican base that's far more conservative than the mainstream. How do you navigate through that?
Well, I don't think the presumption of your question is true. In our governor's race, for example, both of our Republican candidates for governor were pro-choice. Meg Whitman and Steve Poizner, both. So I don't see how that's the case.
Touche. But in terms of moderation on other issues, such as immigration, you had Steve driving Meg Whitman to the right on immigration in order to get the votes you needed for the primary, and then she tried to make a move back towards the center after the primary was over, and you have John and Ken on KFI saying she's a turncoat.
Well, I just don't agree with the presumption of your question. I think that this election, both in the primary and the general, hinged on economic issues. That is the number one issue in this state right now. We have employers who are fleeing the state left and right. We're making it impossible to do business in California. Economic issues were the driving issues in this particular election.
Last question. Are you going to be the next Republican National Committee chairman?
No.
We should say the Washington Post, Politico, they're all talking about you.
I'm flattered. No, I will not be.
Why not?
We have a number of great candidates. We're going to have a good next cycle going forward, and I look forward to being part of that team, but not as chairman.
Ron Nehring, thank you very much for joining us. I appreciate it. Next up,